We're all live. Fantastic. Well, welcome everybody to the 14th of November's workshop and briefing days. And we are very nimble here and have changed our game plan to accommodate a few issues around our externals and internal people for our workshops today. So first cab off the rank today is a workshop in respect of the Cambridge Library feasibility study. And can I leave it, Sally, to you or to Brad? Or Brad, there you are, to introduce our guests. Lovely to see you both, and Tanis and Phil, but I shall leave it up to Brad to kick this item off.
Ngā mihi o te rā koutou. Thank you for accommodating us this morning. Just like to introduce Phil Mackay and Tanis Prasuta from Power, who are part of our project team leading this library feasibility work. I will hand over to them in a minute, but just want to make it quite clear at the outset. As part of this project, there is work around locations within Cambridge. Please don't ask any questions or refer to any sites because that's all commercially sensitive, and we are in a public forum this morning. So just if you can bear that in mind, that'd be fantastic. But otherwise, I'll hand over to the two gentlemen. Thank you.
Can I just ask you to press your button there? Perfect, so we can hear, not like your button, but you know what I'm meaning. Gosh,
You've said it now.
That deteriorated quickly, didn't it?
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I'll pass to Phil Mackay. Phil Mackay's been leading the project for Power Architects. We've had a team of a number of people, and we'll go through our presentation now, if you may.
Kia ora koutou. So most of you probably know the both of us. I will introduce the project team. I'm going to assume that I can sort of take this presentation as read, and I'll go through and focus on a few key points for you, and then leave some time to have some questions at the end. So the general purpose is just to give you a bit of an update, get any feedback that you may have, and perhaps answer any questions that you have at this stage. We're still very much in the thick of it with the project. As Brad pointed out, I just reiterate that we're going through a process of assessing various sites. We really can't touch on what any of those are because we risk putting council in a tricky situation because for commercial reasons. So just to quickly touch on the team, alongside Tanis and myself, we've got support from others in the Power team, but also just of note, Jenny Cave, we brought on board, who is a libraries and museum expert. And alongside Jenny, we have Beth Tauroa, who is mana whenua, and she's leading the mana whenua liaison part of this. We've got a really short timeline for it, 3 months essentially from start to finish, and there's just no way we could get any meaningful engagement with mana whenua if we didn't have mana whenua on the consultant team for this project. So that was sort of a key part of our work, basically. Yeah, we're looking at a range of things in terms of the scope of the project, and a range of different options going forward. Yeah, again, I'll touch on these as we go through. Obviously, our work's involved a lot of research and reviewing. We're trying to establish some really good benchmarks and evidence base for what ends up being proposed. So we're looking at benchmarks and data from New Zealand and Australia. New South Wales in particular is seen as sort of a gold standard in terms of library standards, if you like, but also looking at other examples around the world. Consultation wise, we've run a stakeholder workshop with community organisations in Cambridge. We had some elected members there, I think Liz, Mike and Phil, and obviously members of the Cambridge Community Board as well. The Cambridge Community Board's also done a lot of engagement on this with the local community, so we've reviewed all of their data and we've built that into our research. And as I said, alongside that, Beth has been leading some consultation with mana whenua, and so that she's been out to marae committee meetings, with both Ngāti Koroki Kahukura and Ngāti Haua, and she's run some focus groups as well. And so that's getting initial thoughts, but then also getting feedback as we go along. Guess just the other thing there is we've also done some workshopping with the Cambridge Library staff and talked to a range of other Waipaha staff in terms of specialty areas that we just needed to touch on. Cool. So this is some of the, just at a really high level, some of the feedback that came out of that stakeholder workshop that we ran. So in terms of what we've learnt, these are basically the key themes that we've seen come out of the research and out of the consultation. One of the key ones is the first one there, but basically about the need for a new library to be the heart of the community, to bring the community together and become sort of a hub. Essentially, when you look through these and when you sit back and look at the council's community outcomes, you see that there's really good alignment with those, which is great because it makes our job a lot easier to pitch something that seems to align really well with the council's community outcomes. So then I guess jumping on, so that's I guess primarily about the library, but also about how the library functions as a hub. Second part is in terms of our scope, I guess, is to look at just a library, but B, the possibility of a community centre attached to that library. So these are some of the things, and just emphasising that these will all need to be worked through as part of a full design process and so forth. Our job is to say what could be part of that community hub and what might the requirements of that be. So these are some of the organisations that we've that have been identified. Most of these have come through all of the consultation that's been done. So they've been pretty well supported right across the board. I guess we can ask specific questions later, but those are the ones that have come through. So just thinking in terms of, I guess one of the key things that I guess is pretty important is the amount of space that we need to provide, and obviously alongside that, that goes hand in hand with the cost. And so essentially looking at the standards that we've been reviewing and the benchmarks and the data from other libraries around the place, looking at the current catchment so this is basically looking at the Cambridge and Maungatautari wards. So the Cambridge catchment, the current population sits somewhere in that 26 to nearly 30,000 mark. On that basis, the floor area that a library should have to meet those needs is 2,100 square metres. We're currently about a third of that space, to give you an idea of how how important the need, I guess, is for a new library, or an updated or adapted library of some description. Looking to the future for the 2045 library catchment, that same catchment's going to be close to 40,000, and the need there will be sort of 26 to 2,800 square metres. So I guess where our thinking currently is on this is that you've got two components. You've got a library. The current need for that is 2,100 square metres. You've got a community hub. Now, it's probably not going to be feasible to build a library for the future needs, in terms of, if we were to turn around today and say we need to build a 2,800 square metre library, the library is going to kind of rattle around in that space. So we need to build a library that is fit for purpose, that can be flexible and adapts to those future needs. But probably I guess where our current thinking is that we build. So I guess this is for some of the options. Some of the options are just looking at adaptations of the existing space. But if we're looking at a new build option or a separate site from the current library site, those options are including a community hub. So we would look at sort of around that 2,100 square metres for the library component, and then alongside that you might have another, say, 500, 600, 700 square metres of community hub, which would sit you sort of somewhere around that 26 to 2,800 square metres, which is the future need of the library. Now, what you might find is that over time, some of those community centre functions, their needs may change. They may find that they need more space and go looking for another space. They may find that they just, for whatever reason, those things change. So there may be some natural attrition, which may provide some additional space for the library to grow over time. Equally, another option might be to look at if there is an appetite for building some future growth space, I guess, that can be leased in the meantime commercially. And another way of looking at that, as I've sort of noted at the bottom there, is that we could look at some of the sites may give us the option of a staging approach. So that might be a case of building a 2-level building at the current time, which has kind of the more public facing functions, like some of the community centre things and some of the perhaps louder spaces in the library, because libraries are quite a mix of loud and quiet spaces these days. So some of those louder functions might be on the ground level. You might have more of the collections and the traditionally quieter spaces on the upper level, perhaps. And then alongside that, you're going to have a reasonably sizable car park now, but there's no reason in 20 years' time you couldn't build over the top of that car park, or perhaps the need for car parking might be less in the future. So there's lots of options in terms of flexibility there, but I think, I guess to kind of bring that back, our kind of current thinking is that we're probably looking at a library of around that 2,100 square metres as the core kind of library component. And that includes sort of some of the functions that we think of. So in the research, some of the functions that we've identified that are sort of part of a library these days are things like a maker's space. It's having things like a room that the library can do their programs that they run, things like Wriggle and Rhyme that they had on this morning at the Cambridge Library, that they're currently having to kind of squeeze in between shelf space, which yeah, obviously isn't a great outcome. So I think, yeah, there's a lot of work going on at the moment still. I guess probably the key thing to pick up on here is that what we're looking to put together will result in a final report. That report will basically inform some business cases for the long-term plan. So we'll have a bunch of options there. And ultimately, you know, the community will then give their feedback on what they think is the right answer. Yeah, and I guess just open to questions.
Thanks very much, Phil. Questions, Claire?
Thanks, great presentation, and I'm really excited about the whole prospects of this being worked through with the community. So good luck. Hope it goes really well. The only one question I had was you mentioned about haora, or health services, because you'd be familiar with what happened in Rotorua, where the Ministry of Health was looking for better outcomes for Māori, and they actually, I'm pretty sure they contributed to the capital cost of a revamped library.
Yep.
Yeah, and that worked tremendously. Yeah, so just wondered if you're able to explore that a bit more with the needs of the Cambridge community or something, to see if there might be government departments that are willing to put up some funding to get at some sort of partnership going there. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Absolutely. Can I speak to that before you?
Yeah,
is that all right?
absolutely. And then Liz will have a
Yeah,
question.
look, I think that's a really interesting one for us as part of that community centre function. And it's probably the most interesting in terms of whether it is a good fit or not. So it's one of the things that there was quite a clear steer on in community board's feedback that they got in their consultation with the community was that a library should be a library and it should be a learning and educational and cultural facility. It shouldn't be about health or fitness or any of the things. You know, if you look at libraries throughout the world, there's not a thing that is included in them that you can't. Like, there's everything, and that's probably the. You know, it was discussed at the stakeholder workshop that we did. There was seen as there were some positive attributes, but also there were some concerns around things like privacy and so forth. Obviously, it's worked elsewhere. On the flip side, there was a really strong appetite for it from the Mana Whenua consultation, probably in line with what you've seen in Rosarua, is that they saw that the library could be a gateway or an access point to better engagement with health services and therefore better health outcomes for the community. So look, I think what we can do at the moment is say what might that look like, put a sort of a rough cost against that, and then post long-term plan if there's if there's an appetite for that community hub component. Then council can go forward and explore that with Te Whatu Ora or with the Māori Health Authority or whoever the appropriate group is at that point in time, and say, look, how's this going to work? What can you come to the table with, and how can we put this together?
Yeah, look, thanks for this report. And I really appreciate the fact that we've been brought in nice and early, because we haven't really had an opportunity as an elected council group to discuss the kind of the brief where this might go or where it could go. So I really appreciate Claire's comments, because this is something we want to design for our community. And I think it can go so many different directions. And I don't want to limit ourselves to any previous thinking at all. I think that we want to be really open-minded about until we've heard from all the different groups. Love the idea that we're considering other groups combining in a space as well, because again, this is something we're designing for Cambridge, ultimately Waipa. So what I'm not seeing probably at this point, and it's because it's too early, and I get that, are the aspirations around some of the other things that you see in other parts of New Zealand. So 3D printers, which we see in Christchurch, which I know a few of us really liked that idea. Was like a kind of whole music section as well. You can record your own song. So those kind of that youth space in particular, which I know that we'll start to see, but I'm kind of hoping that we can start to see some of this come through soon, just so that we are preparing our community that this is not just about a standard typical library. Please open your minds to everything. We're open for all suggestions. So those are just my comments at this point.
Thanks.
Roger.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. I think this is really great and totally in support. And I'm sorry I wasn't at that workshop. I think I was probably in France or somewhere like that at the time. I certainly would have been. But I certainly support the mention that you've got through there, and that is recognizing the synergies that there are through library resourcing and library facility and heritage and museum. And I know that that's reflected even currently in the library's Heritage Month, where they work with the museum. So I see a lot of synergies that can be modelled into a building of this nature. And I remember I did a presentation on the first 10 years of Cambridge, which was a spoken presentation. And we squeezed, and you can imagine, we squeezed 60 people in for that presentation, and they were basically sitting on each other's knees and laps. So, you know, certainly the flexibility of space within for applications of whatever kind of learning environment you've got to go there would be.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things to understand is that the Cambridge Library currently has you know, a third of the space that you would normally
Yeah.
expect for an area that it's servicing of that size. But actually, it has collections that are not that much smaller than what you would expect for that same catchment. So we've packed a lot of books into that space, and what it means is that what we're really missing compared to other libraries, and particularly compared to newer libraries, is space for seating, space for youth areas, for youth to just hang out and chill after school or whatever. And certainly what we're seeing in newer libraries, to your point, Liz, is that there's things like maker spaces. You know, Rotatuna is the most obvious example nearby that has a maker space with 3D printers and so forth, and it's packed every single afternoon after school, apparently. And so I think a new library with more area would see significantly improved spaces, but also significantly improved accessibility and things like that. Spaces for people to move between the aisles, shelving that's at heights that's actually, you know, ergonomically not damaging for the staff, good staff workspaces so that they're able to work more efficiently in the back of house, all of those things.
Can I also just comment on the population projection that you're talking about? And it's good that, I mean, you know what my view is, that we'll be ahead of 39,000 in 20 years' time. I think we'll be closer to the next decade, the next 10 years in that time. But the flexibility for growth is going to be essential. That, you know, we don't want to be looking at creating another community hub, including library, in another 20 years. It needs to be flexible to be able to expand to meet the requirements.
The point that I'd make there as well is that if a project like this goes through the long-term plan, it's not likely to happen again for a long time. So we've got to make sure that we get it right. We can't just do something a little bit incremental and then find that we're in 5 or 10 years' time, we're really behind the 8 ball already. I think that's probably, if I'm not speaking out of place, the way that the TA library feels a little bit at the moment, is that it's not actually that old, and there are challenges. I think, yeah. So to your point, I guess we've got to make sure that we do build something that is going to have capacity to look after the community for a good amount of time, and is fit for purpose and flexible so that it can look after the community and change as the community's needs change. You know, things, I mean, we may be, you know, we may grow even faster than the projections show, but equally, you know, we may have less books on the floor in 20 years' time, you know, proportionally.
Dale Marie, then Mike.
Tēnā kōrua. I don't know if this has been floated because I'm the, you know, basket on the block around here. But I'm just wondering, where is there any opportunity? I hear that we look out to iwi to partner and do some stuff there, but we have this huge dairy industry within this region. And I'm wondering how much can we look at these bigger players like Fonterra and seeing how they can contribute to having a space within the library design where, I don't know, I just think that's a conversation in its own. It's actually something that we are big in this rohe around our agriculture. How does it feature in the library design? How can we make it attractive and sexy enough that Fonterra will help pay for it, and get some of these bigger? And I'm going like this to Mike because I know that he's there as well. But you know, just looking at some of these bigger industry players that might want to partner in that space around some of the funding, because yeah, we have to be looking like we're still saving money while we're trying to pump money into things. But I'm just trying to think of a bit more innovatively around who maybe we can go and tap on, but what can we take to them as those partnership and collaborative relationships around what could that look like for Fonterra if they buy into that space of the library? You know, they got lots of money.
I think
Yeah.
that's one of the themes that, well, not that specifically, but in terms of the themes that did come out of that consultation, one of the ones that was quite strong was around the idea that this needs to be a library that looks and feels of this place. You know, whether that's the pre-colonial history of this place, the colonial history of this place, you know, all of the interwoven threads, but you know, the current kind of land use of this place. It's got to be a library that's of this place.
Mike.
Yeah, thanks through the chair. A couple of things off the back of Dale Marie's. Who knows, there might be another provincial growth fund coming up in the next few days. That might be something we can tap into, Ken. And just picking up on this, on some of Liz's comments too, and just this imaging page that's sort of here. And I guess, you know, what you've done here, of course, is sort of synthesized several ideas into a caption, I guess. But that meeting at the town hall of several stakeholders and people invested in this, yeah, the feedback was really interesting, and I think Liz picks up on a lot of what you said. There was a lot of which you'll have all the notes on, obviously. People were really looking at way past the library, and they were looking at the community hub, and I really do think that's what Cambridge will be expecting, something beyond a historical view of a library, and also interested in the next part of his business case around, you know, the hours, the people who would run this, which is beyond staff, I'm thinking, because of all the ideas that will come through, and then the revenue streams, which because it's going to be beyond a library, I'm hoping, could be quite diverse. So yeah, looking forward to the next stage, and just congratulations on what you've done and how you've consulted in the, you know, reasonably short time. You've done superbly. And Antanas, I've never been to a meeting where you've just only introduced yourself, so you're doing very well. Well done, Phil.
I'm not going to answer that.
He needs no introduction.
There's leadership from behind, Phil.
Andrew.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, look, clearly what Cambridge has in terms of library is wildly inadequate. And my memory tells me that I haven't heard that Te Awamutu as librarians are, you know, experiencing issues, but it doesn't surprise me, because my memory says that when it was built, we knew it was not to standard, if you like, in terms of space and size. But of course, we are constrained by, you know, financial issues. And, you know, talking about other funding sources to perhaps overcome some of those issues is a, you know, to achieve what we'd all like is probably a fact of life, I guess is what I'm saying.
Point well made. Any other? Oh, Bruce.
I've got a question for Antonis, because he has, the city hasn't said anything. Antonis, in the future with parking restrictions and, you know, more area needed for land, is there any thought to going underground for parking when you design?
Yeah, so that's really interesting. So it's all to do with cost, you know, the value, I guess, you get out of it. So we know that building single story is the most affordable way to build. Building 2 stories is a bit more expensive per square metre, and building 3 stories is even more expensive. Going underground is even more expensive than that. So we're more inclined to go up than go down. But when we're looking at various sites, the land area available will be probably the most important constraint. Because most of the sites in town, if we're looking at a central CBD type location, will be smaller sites. That means we're going to be going up. And there's more cost involved in that. And so that's part of the balancing act we'll be looking at when we look at locations. And we are looking at a good couple of handfuls of locations, and that'll be what we're bearing in mind. But going underground would be nice to have, but I don't think it's at this point realistic.
Yeah, good question. Lou.
You think it's a great project. I think it's got into place. One of the things I'm just going to ask you in your discussions and going out to the community, the advent of ebooks, the fact that ordinary books, although they have knowledge and they're tomes of knowledge, etc., are going to be replaced digitally over time. Okay, and would the actual idea of space be constrained a little bit by the fact that we could put a lot of this out electronically over the next future, and perhaps then have more as community hub space? Just a thought and asking.
Yeah, it's an interesting one that's come up. The adoption of ebooks has been really poor in the general sense. For the libraries, they cost something like, and I'm really just working from my memory here, so, but they cost something like twice what a physical book would cost the library to invest in when they're buying new collections. And they then have the use of that for, say, 18 months to a year before they then have to rebuy it. Whereas actually a lot of physical books would last longer than 18 months, even if they're being lent out and some of them, if it's not 18 months or 2 years, it might be that they can only issue them 40 times, and then they've used up that ebook essentially, and they have to buy it all over again. So the financial models of them are making it, I guess, in some ways harder for libraries to invest in those. And also there's all the issues of different devices and, so if I have a Kindle, I can't loan an ebook from the local library on my Kindle because it's not compatible and so forth. So there's all those issues that we always have with technology. And I think alongside that, the reality is that a lot of people who are likely going to be good at taking up that technology and using ebooks as a general rule are likely buying them on their own devices rather than lending them from the libraries. So I think there are challenges around that. I think that's not to say there isn't some other technology coming along that could completely change
I was just
the
going to say
model,
that.
because we just don't know. So that's why anything that we do, ultimately we have to be able to make it flexible in the future.
Indeed.
I think to your point, when Kindle and the like came on board about 5 to 10 years ago, everyone thought it would be the death of books, but it's actually been quite the opposite. People still find the romanticness, I suppose, of it, of going to the library and getting a hard copy book, and something a bit nicer than just being on your Kindle all the time. So that's what we've seen in play out over the last few years anyway.
Yeah, I wrote down this romance of a book, which is, there's nothing quite like the lick of your finger. You can't do that turn the page on a Kindle, can you? Dale Marie, did you want to add anything there?
And when we're at the marae, books work because we just can't get the signal to download any of our books. So, books are still a huge feature for us in Māori. And a lot of our reference huge books are just not available online. So, yeah.
Cool. I think we had a pretty comprehensive discussion there. I just wanted to reiterate and highlight, I guess, some of the points raised. I think we can accept that we're in an era now that it's beyond just the book. It's beyond books. The offering is beyond books, and that living room, they now become, rather than the library, with all the shelves, they're actually the living room of our towns now, and as such need to provide all of the comfort and alternative services, if you like, of a living room or a lounge, as opposed to just a library. And again, that sort of leads to the service provision at places like Turanga and Christchurch, and obviously you're familiar with Te Kiri Aranui and Rototuna, which I'm pleased to see you've already referenced. Incidentally, I was just talking yesterday to a Hamilton City Council staffer who was telling me that the place is just heaving with teenagers. They can't get them out of the place. So I think it's testament to the fact that, that there is a greater offering. It's gone beyond books. So really pleased to see that you've got that clear message from your community, and certainly from around our table too. So keep up great work. Really, really good to hear where you're at. There being no further comments, Brad, did you want to wind that up at all?
I was just going to say, thanks for that feedback, really appreciate it. And also thanks heaps to Joe and Elise and the community board. They've been phenomenal in championing this project throughout the process as well, and also doing some really engagement with the community on our behalf. So really appreciate their contribution.
Fantastic, yeah. Yeah, thank you. Reiterate that gratitude to the community board in Cambridge for, you know, taking a real leading role in this. So many thanks. Liz.
Yeah, look, apologies if I've missed this along the way, but I just wondered why there wasn't an elected member on the management group. Just one, yeah. Is there a reason for that? Or?
No, we kind of saw the facilitation of that and through the stakeholder workshop, and then this avenue as well, just to bring those ideas through to the table. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wonder if it might be worthwhile. I guess we've seen some projects where we just have been missing kind of that that direction sometimes that we might have here, but hasn't necessarily been communicated all the time. I've seen that with some big projects. I just wonder if it might be a good idea, that's all. This is a really important project, and having an elected member sort of really focused on the project and making sure that it's still heading in the right direction. You know, a lot of our strategic plans and things are changing so quickly, that's all. Whether that's might be an idea, encourage other comments.
Yeah, I think that's a good observation and a good suggestion to make.
If it's feasible. Depends whether, yeah, if it's feasible, I'd be happy to put my name up, because a lot of, you know, some of this is going to involve youth, and we've just heard about how youth are using the space, and we get the feedback from probably all of our towns how youth want more and more things to do, and this is really opportunity to involve them. So hey, happy to put my hand up, but it's up to the group whether we want someone on there.
Maybe if we don't identify who it is, but just in a consensus that maybe it might be someone from not even a Cambridge councillor, it might be someone else, but I'll leave it up to you, Ms. Susan.
Yeah, look, if I could invite you to take that away and have a think on it and communicate with us whether you think there's some merit to that. Certainly I think there's, in terms of an oversight around strategic direction and you know, connectivity to bigger plans and strategies at play at a council level, I think you could probably benefit from having that person sitting around with their feet under the table with you. But I'll leave it with you to come back to us as to whether you want somebody there. Okay, that's a good idea. Cool. Well, fantastic. Well, that's that matter. Thank you very much. You can go on the rest of your day. Welcome to stay if you like, but I appreciate you're both busy men. Okay, next item, as I said, we're slightly out of order here, but it's our workshop on Ahuaki, our community spatial plan. Hello, Vanessa.
I don't.
And Kirsty. Lovely to see you both, particularly to you, Vanessa, because I don't think I've seen you for what feels like forever. Yeah, bonjour. Yeah, I'll leave it with you to commence your workshop.
Kia ora, everyone. Morena, I think still. Yeah. No.
Yeah, 16 minutes late.
Okay. Good afternoon. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us today. We are going to present a little bit of what has happened over the last few months. I think I haven't actually reported back for a wee while. We only have 30 minutes. So if we can start with, oh, that's me, sorry. Yes. So what we're going to cover today, just having a really quick overview over the project progress and where we are and the what's happening next. Everything is actually going very quickly at the moment and over the next kind of 6, 7, 8 months. We're going to look at the Word Cafe as well, which has just concluded a couple of weeks ago. And then we will be looking at what's happening next with our internal and external stakeholders. So a really quick overview of a project progress. As you know, we are near actually starting the draft of a plan. We have received a lot of feedback through our community engagement, through the Work Cafe, through the workshop, through our Mana Whenua Hui and Tui over the last few months. We will be entering this really kind of triggering drafting plan with the implementation plan coming up a little bit more structure and tangible over the next month or so. Looking ahead for the special consultative process, which is scheduled in alignment with the LTP in March and April. So really kind of working towards that and setting ourselves up for an approval of the consultation report ahead of the SCP by February. And that is in view to have an adoption point around the June mark. Word Cafe, as you all know, so last workshop was on the 4th of November. It's been quite a long process and not in time frames because we could have probably done it longer, but in the amount of feedback and engagement from the community involvement. And I can't thank enough the members of our community who have actually I would say sacrifice maybe some of their Saturdays to come along and answer and try to debate some of the last 4 topics that we had on the Ahuake. As you know, we had 2 debating workshops. That was the second and the third one, where we captured over 556 pieces of feedback. So that was unexpected. It was very in-depth feedback received on those couple of days across the 4 topics. And just as a reminder, which were placemaking and housing, park and public facilities, economic development, and heritage art and culture. Out of those 550 pieces of feedback, we had to do a bit of work to actually categorize them and make them a little bit more concise, and we ended up having a medium list of 32 statements, which actually captured all of those feedback. Obviously, through the 550 pieces of feedback, a lot of duplicates, and so we could actually try to capture all this through 32 statements. Those 32 statements were then put through through a questionnaire and were sent out to all participants of the Word Cafe. And we asked them to rank what were the priorities for us to actually debate further at the 4th workshop. And for them to be actually further translated into a set of recommendations, which will be actually workshop on the last day again. So I'm going to go through all of that process through the presentation. But what we ended up is on the 4th of November, having a set of 12 recommendations, and we agreed and workshop and wordsmith the top 3 ranked ones, which were then presented to the elected members present on the day, and committee boards and Mana Whenua reps. So a little bit more about the process and how it went through. So you can't really barely see, but I hope you will get actually the PowerPoint presentation later on. But on the placemaking, so just as a reminder, the question was put forward was what makes your community feel like home to you, and what are you proud of, and what do you show your visitors? And those questions, actually, just to say, they were the overarching question. That's the ones that we're actually debating during workshop 2 and 3. And obviously, the committee tell us what they want to tell us, and they went a little bit outside, actually just looking at placemaking. But we had some really good feedback, especially when it comes about the intent of housing within Waipam. The three top ranked ones were items who were also discussed already within the plan. So what we did is when the top ranked one, the three top ranked one were already on the plan, we actually, and we were quite transparent on this during the workshop floor. So they knew exactly what had been actually processed and why we were setting some aside and focusing on just a few ones during the workshop on the Saturday. Some were already well dipped into within the plan itself. So we're put aside, and what we did is actually workshop the second ranked one after those. So on the left side of the screen, and that's going to be like that for all the presentation of the recommendation, you can see actually the ranking, and the number kind of shows you the ranking as well. And the statements are on the right side, and obviously the color coding between the ones that were already in the plan and therefore not workshop on the day, and the second ranked one, the ones that ended up presented as recommendations. So briefly, again, not the best to actually, but you will get the PowerPoint, right? But that was really to show you the process. So taking actually those three statements, change them, translate them into recommendations. And what you see in red is the track change of what was actually brought on the day and the wordsmithing that was actually produced with the community. And you know, the fantastic kind of intent of the Word Cafe was that you can see actually the community coming to a strong alignment when things are actually discussed kind of together. And that's really what we realized through the Word Cafe and through those kind of recommendation. Across the different demographic, there was actually a strong alignment after when it comes about those recommendations. So recommendation one was really to do with the intent of having intergenerational vision when we are looking for housing providers. So there is actually a very a strong keenness, I think, from the community to have less and less enclave on our retirement homes being sitting a little bit outside of our communities, but have actually that intergenerational exchange with our younger community and the older community to actually come together. And that's actually coming through quite a few different recommendations across the set of recommendations through the Word Cafe. That second one was really looking at balancing placemaking and infrastructure, so ensuring that the infrastructure of the requirement for infrastructure doesn't actually shadows the identity of a place as well. Yeah, that was the second recommendation. The third one was on ensuring that we still have greenfield the green spaces in our placemaking, and a strong call on introducing community gardens as well. Yes, Claire.
Can I ask a question there? Like the infrastructure one, did they give us a particular example of the infrastructure
locations?
not being in place when business or industry was established? Did they give an example?
They didn't, not particular, not that I can recall of, but they were talking about the suitability of some infrastructure in regard to the places. So it's a matter of scale.
I was wondering if it's more to do with heavy traffic management rather than the actual business itself. But anyway, I've tried.
Sorry, I didn't.
If it was more to do with the heavy traffic that's generated rather than, because that isn't actually infrastructure. Yep. You know, that's the problem. Yeah, it'd be good to get that drilled down a bit. Yeah, thank you though. Yeah, really great feedback.
Yeah, actually, just on that, because when I think about, you know, obviously the investment that we've made in this whole process, the drilling down is is really important. So for me personally, because of the investment we've made in this process and the planning, or how we want to use this information now, I really want to see a huge. I want to see all the bits and pieces that go with that. Yeah, just so I fully understand what these recommendations actually mean.
So through the chair, this is the summary, and we have captured all of the feedback that is being typed up and collated. And as you're aware, there is a recommendations report that is being prepared by the university as our partner to detail the process, to detail the outputs, which include those through each step of the process. And I think there is an intention that that will be potentially referenced as appendices, and then insights and learnings. So all of that is captured. It won't be lost. So just to highlight
Yeah,
that.
that's a good point. But also just to remembering that those recommendations needs to be actually intertwined within the plan as well. So the actions who are actually, the recommendation are not always action-based. They are actually a wish from the community to say, here are your priorities that we seek actually to be advanced within the plan. So those will be actually intertwined. So there is quite already some intervention linked into that, about especially what you're mentioning, Claire, about having some communities being severed already by traffic, by state highways. So we talk about this in the plan already. So this is actually used to reinforce those intervention and to actually kind of bring them up to a priority kind of level as well. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for this. Now, did I hear you say a little while ago that this PowerPoint presentation, and recognizing that this is only part of the way through, it's got to go to the university and they will do added summary.
Yeah.
But as it is now, in that PowerPoint, are we getting to see this PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Because it's really interesting, I think, and I prefer to go along with the journey rather than to just get the final picture when the journey is finished.
Just to recalling here today, I am actually resetting what was said on Saturday. So for the purple, we weren't actually on the day. This is actually why we're having those 30 minutes to recap what has happened on the day. So it's not just a final kind of conclusion of what was done.
Oh.
This is actually recapturing the entire process of Saturday to present it to the absentees of the day.
And as from what I'm seeing, although I can't read either of the two screens, a bit too far away from me, but even those track changes would be interested to know what kind of that movement was, so that we can keep up to the play with the generation of this important document. Would be great to get that.
So through you, Madam Chair, governance will be making this available and diligent for elected.
Yeah.
That's exactly what was put up.
Exactly.
And when they got everyone to stand in a line,
this
was how they got everyone across the line, these amendments. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah, but that's right. It just, obviously, we only have 30 minutes for me to present this, 15 minutes now to actually present this to you. And I wanted to kind of show you exactly the process that has been made. And this is an open, obviously, workshop as well. So wanting to actually show the people that nothing has actually been changed since the 4th of November. And this recommendation will be included as they are within the plan. This is what the work cafe intended to do. This is what we're going to do. So therefore, this is actually what I'm presenting to you today. Yeah. Yeah. If that's okay, we take actually question at the end, so I can actually go through all the set of recommendations and kind of highlighting a little bit what we heard on the day. The economic development was probably the largest one where we received actually the most feedback, recalling that this was actually probably the first time that we actually went to our community asking what they wanted to see to retain a skilled labored force within actually WIPA, but also to actually attract businesses. Skimming through, and again, I will invite you to kind of read through. but they were really about calling councils on partnering with other organizations to ensure that we retain actually our workforce. One being going back, showing again, sorry, I'm just trying to keep in time now. Recommendation 1 was focusing on the partnership role for council and looking at creating employment and employment opportunities, but also that intergenerational kind of knowledge. So having actually elders teaching and passing on knowledge to the youngers. The second recommendation was really regarding marketing WIPA within the regional context as well. So packaging activities and using our role as a regulator to ensure that we keep actually those assets who are can be capitalized on within WIPA and protecting them as they are. The third one was to use actually our vision and community outcome to prompt our businesses and industries to be in line with our vision and community. So to ensure that the industry and businesses that we are supporting within WIPA have some aspects of social welfare almost within their vision and their bottom lines as well.
There was quite a discussion when this was presented, and there had been changes made around clean versus dirty industry and attracting the right business for WIPA, consistent with our vision and community outcomes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Did they decide on clean?
No, we probably didn't have. I think some
Yeah,
examples were provided. Yeah, not to go into it, but yeah, some examples were provided.
Yeah, and the other thing too, just going back to what I earlier said, but the previous slide under economic development and recommendation 2, it talks about prioritising or promoting public facilities. I'd be keen to know, what are those public facilities? How have they been ranked? Are there some that are rated higher than others?
Moving on to the park and public facilities recommendations there, which were really about how we use our community hubs, and that includes community halls, libraries, museum, town hall villages as a whole. Again, quite a strong conversation as the multifunctionalities of our facilities, and also about creating a balance within our rural district between the east and the west of our district as well. Moving on to the recommendation. The first one was really to look at a consistent management and the role of council as a supporter of this consistency across all the community halls. So there seems to be quite a disparity about some community halls being very successful and some being not used at all. And we know that there are some really good teams and trying to actually get some sense across all those disparities, and understanding actually what makes a good community hall run, and how does it actually serve the community that it is firstly built for. The second recommendation really pointed out to that kind of imbalance which is felt through the community between the east and west of the district. So ensuring that there is equal investment across those through different kind of mediums, either through the facilities, that is through building connections as well. And the third one, again, that intergenerational kind of aspect of creating some spaces and the role of council in supporting some initiatives and programs where we see actually those two extreme of our demographic actually coming together and supporting one another. Yeah. The last topic was on heritage art and culture. A little bit less discussion maybe compared to the other three topics, which is not really unexpected. They're really looking at accessibility, significance of site. How do we market actually, not market, but how do we communicate those set of significance across the district? And what does art means as well for the community, and how it is better used as activator of communities, as well as being an aesthetic kind of aspect. So those recommendations were, first one was going back onto the visibility of Te Rawai journeys, also the visibility of our natural and heritage assets across the district. The second one, interestingly, was completely rewritten, and that's what you'll be able to kind of see with a focus on art shouldn't be just something that is solid and which is a piece of wood, something like that, which is in the park. It needs to be, it has different ways to actually be expressed. It needs to bring the community together. It needs to be something which is actually done by the community as well. So not just using artists, but using actually the members of the community, and then creating those pieces of art within them. So that was quite an interesting one to rewrite with some members of the Work Cafe. Yeah. And that last one, which was about inclusion, ensuring that when we have actually those events, those cultural program, and that they are accessible by absolutely everyone. It's not just the disability community. There's a lot of talk around the elders as well, not being always able to access some events because they don't feel actually accessible enough or easy enough to go to. Yeah. So through the different recommendations, as Kirsty mentioned, the University of Waikato is currently drafting a report, which is pretty much going to look at what we've done as a case study against actually the best practice, and recalling as well that they have actually guided us throughout the entire process. They will also provide a set of reporting of how the recommendations were drafted, and this kind of shortlisting process that I've just actually kind of described. I need to thank as well all the staff who have been actually involved throughout the 4 workshop. It is additional time that they're taking on top of their BAU, so gladly appreciated. I think across all the members of staff who have participated, a very positive outcome. To actually have the community kind of debating some topics like that has been really useful, as well to some of our business skills writers, some of our project managers who can actually take some of the feedback on and use them into further work. Again, really good feedback overall. Yeah, to be a process to repeat potentially. Anything you wanted to? No? Okay. Quickly, it's really on what are the next steps. So we will be having another round of engagement, and that is really to kind of consolidate what we've heard over the last kind of few months through the Mana Whenua Hui and the Work Cafe recommendation, because as I said, as I've just explained, they will actually make their way into what we call the proposed scope of change report, which will be presented to our project control group this month, at the end of the month. And some of us the scope of change will then be weaved into the plan itself. So we are writing the plan in parallel to the implementation plan. We will be having a session with our internal working group, which are project managers, activity managers across the council. So we can look actually at the implementation plan. At the end of the day, they will be the main ones who are using this plan to direct their business case as well. So we want them to actually be involved significantly over the next month or so. And then we will have a session with our stakeholders, likely to take the shape of a survey, and this is really due to time and capacity, and ensuring we have what we need by the end of the year, and getting them to kind of tell us, once we have this program of works set up and understood, to have them tell us what is their involvement, where do they see themselves being involved. And the RASCI is for responsible, accountable, support, consult, or inform. So having them going through a RASCI matrix, and for each program of work, understanding where they want to be, and also to understand what type of project they are currently planning on or currently have, will align with the similar outcomes of those program of works. So we can have a really good picture about those three levels, again, that we discussed early on, which is your level of advocacy, your level of partnership, and your level of funding as well. So the implementation plan should be really a recipe book about how we deliver actually those program of works with our stakeholders, internal and external, across the next kind of and the final question to
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you so much for feeding that back to us, Roger.
Yeah, I'd just like, and I said this on that Saturday, I'm really impressed with what you've achieved by introducing this concept of World Cafe and trying to develop that participatory democracy process. And I think that the results of this are really an endorsement of looking at that concept and seeing how we can take that wider and broader into our community involvement in our major strategic, even into our LTP and into our annual plan processes. So well done on doing that. And which sheet will it be in?
It's in there now.
Is it in there now?
Yeah, just an update.
So just
recent.
through you, Madam Chair, understand from Zoe that it has been put into diligent and it is in a book at the bottom under a new tab.
Yeah. But just one thing, I think one of the lessons learned is we have done this over a longer period. We could have, and the level of detail would have been there. You know, you actually this is more. You know, we took a chance for it. The level of detail that we got. Can actually come when you start taking more time and drill a little bit more into this question. Remember that we only had one workshop of 4 hours to debate the four questions. But as Kirsty mentioned, the level of detail is really in this 556 pieces of feedback that we can actually make available as well. Absolutely. Yeah.
Great. Liz. Yeah, no, look, I really appreciate that. And you're right, I completely understand and I appreciate your last comment around that, because we've got to manage our expectations as well. For me, it's just making sure that I don't end up down a rabbit hole and then I fully understand the description and have because I'm going to be using this. I can see that we will use these recommendations and so much of our decision making. And for me, this has been such a worthwhile process. And it does beg the question, do we carry on? So
Through you, Madam Chair, if I can just respond to that point. As you're aware, there's a piece of work that's being done around a framework for anchor institutions, and part of that will canvass participatory democracy. Absolutely, I think we can see real merit. Roger mentioned, budgeting processes. There's real scope for that. And I think from the community, the university are coordinating a response from the community group, but certainly on the face of it, through the workshop sessions we had, overwhelmingly the response was positive in terms, and you could see too people changing through that process. It was great. It was representative of our communities, people who don't normally engage in our processes. So from me, I'd also just like to say thank you to each of you for taking a risk and supporting us to do this and to, I guess, explore this concept. Thank you.
Mike, then Claire.
Yeah, thanks for the chair. Vanessa and Kirsty, hey, thank you, I guess, for bringing this to us earlier in the year, because you sort of don't know what you don't know. This was a totally foreign concept to me. And yeah, just talking to people at that final session 4, and you did right, they absolutely appreciated being listened to and actually be able to input into grassroots democracy, which is really important. So I guess our challenge is, when this comes back, is to what and where we fit into the LTP. But the concept, I think, it's almost hopefully going to become an expectation that we, off the back of Ahuahaki, that we follow this sort of participatory democracy leading forward. And I think we'll just get far better engagement from our community because it's sort of hands-on. Thank you both. Well, and actually one last thing, that photo of all the staff up there, a massive thank you, because, hey, it was above and beyond, and it was very evident, and it was impressive when you walked in and saw, the staff on that day, but all the days. So yeah, big heads up to the staff.
And I just want to echo all the praise, that's been given so far. It's been a tremendous outcome, and thank you, for the commitment from your team and the staff. I just wanted to explore more, or just put it on the table. It's something that Liz said as well, like for some stuff that we would like to drill down a bit deeper in. Like what I had in mind actually was, if you can identify one or two of the people that made those comments, just to understand exactly what they were referring to, because I think we've got to make sure that, it's a bit ambiguous. And if they were willing to just have, a one-on-one chat about what exactly the issue was, that will really help our understanding more.
Maybe just to respond to that, I mean, the recommendations are a collaboration. You can see that from the entire group, supported by staff who really were there as facilitators. There have been post-it notes and the questionnaires that, or the questionnaire that was responded to in terms of ranking. So I don't know that we can identify a specific individuals, but certainly, as we said, there is a process of collating all of that feedback through the process.
Great. Well, I think that probably brings this matter to a conclusion for now. Look, my only disappointment, I guess, with this project is that I couldn't be there at any of the workshops, but I guess you can't be in two places at the same time. But look, it was clearly well headed by the two of you, and huge input clearly from staff, as already noted, and really interested in some of the richness of the comments that have come out and the recommendations, which I'm going to go on and say we probably would never have come up with around this table. So I think that's a real testament to the fact that we're actually spreading our net further and actually asking for from a more representative base what people are after and what they want. So I think it's a win all round. So yeah, really exciting. Looking forward to the final reports coming through.
Well,
Thank you.
What was great too is all the age groups there. You had younger people there too, not just older people. So it was really special there.
Yeah. Fantastic. Right, team, I'm a terrible timekeeper, so how about we have a very quick lunch and we come back in at 1:15 for our next workshop. My apologies to staff for keeping you waiting. Well, welcome back, everybody. We'll kick off our afternoon session. And my apologies for the slight delay. It's like herding cats in here. So our next workshop, open workshop is on draft financial strategy number 1. It's a very salubrious title, creative, got that one out. Nice to see you both, Cheryl and Yolanda. Take it away.
Cool, thank you. I do have a presentation. Just wait to get that up. So I think the reason why we called it a draft number 1 is it's kind of a first cut of a draft, I guess, and it's just an opportunity to kind of check in with you to make sure that we're on the right track with some of the kind of key messaging and oh, hang on. Here we go. Some of the key messaging and goals that we've included in the financial strategy. So it is a bit of a kind of awkward time because I guess we're kind of having these LTP budget kind of conversations running parallel. And really the financial strategy needs to kind of take wherever you get to in terms of all those conversations and start to kind of pull it together and go, well, what does this mean in terms of the financial approach that we're going to take and all the other legislative requirements that we have to fulfill in terms of doing the financial strategy. So we thought it would be good though, just to have a bit of a check-in and confirm some of the key messages and goals and make sure we are on the right track. It is a work in progress, so some of it will be definitely finessed. And as you go through your budget conversations, wherever we land on that will be the story that we tell in the financial strategy. So that's kind of where we're at. So I just really wanted to check in. There's some key messages kind of in the start of the financial strategy where we kind of talk about our financial picture in a nutshell, and just kind of make sure that we're on the right track there, or is there anything kind of missing or doesn't seem quite right? And I guess what we've done is reflect some of the direction that you've provided through those LTP budget workshops to date in the strategy. So we're trying to kind of piece together, I guess, the story about the direction that we're taking. So one of the kind of key things is recognising that we do have some pretty good foundations to kind of build on from a financial perspective in terms of our debt and rates being fairly low over the years. We do have some challenges, and most councils have those challenges, this LTP, and some of those things we have limited control over in terms of inflation and interest rates, but we can control our reaction to that and what we're going to kind of do to manage some of that. It's also kind of recognising that you've done a lot of really good work on developing your strategic framework. So you've been really clear what your community outcomes are, what your strategic priorities are, and what that kind of means for this LTP. And we need to kind of, it's almost like you've done a top-down kind of approach and we're kind of working bottom-up in terms of the budget, and those two things will eventually kind of meet in the middle. I think the words around being cautious but optimistic, I think the Mayor talked about that in one of the first workshops that we had, kind of recognising that we still have a really positive future ahead of us. There's some things that we kind of need to pull back on in the early years of the LTP, but we still want to kind of keep things progressing for the district. So obviously wherever we get to in terms of our rates limit and debt profile will come further in the LTP budget discussions. And just then reflecting kind of what we've done to start to manage our budget situations. So again, that reflects what you've kind of talked about in some of your LTP budget workshops. And we also included a section in here about what we aren't prepared to do. And I think that's quite good kind of messaging to the community to kind of go, yes, we're in a challenging situation, but there's some things that we're not wanting to compromise on. And these are those things. So it's kind of the reverse side of the conversation, I guess. So just keen for any feedback on those key messages. Do they feel about right? Is there anything missing or anything kind of seems a bit crazy or whatever? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I think that generally, yeah, it looks pretty good, and comfortable with the messaging and all that kind of thing. I guess there seems to be, from my point of view, I felt that there could be more emphasis on long-term strategies to help with revenue streams that aren't rates related, which is, I see in that sector meeting, yeah, there was a strong message from some of the commentators there about a longer term view to, I suppose, create the conditions where, yeah, reliance on rates reduced. And at a previous workshop, I raised that, and I thought that I got agreement that we would look at new revenue streams like a visitor levy for cycleways or public toilets and recreational things that are used by visitors. So there's no mention of that. Yeah, and in that same conversation was things that would advance productivity opportunities, I suppose. I'm sure it's in the digital roadmap work, which is probably underway, but there's no visibility of that in this document. And also, I was trying to work out what it is about it that, yeah, I'm sort of not feeling I've got the full story, and maybe it's because there aren't any targets or you know, hard goals in it. It's just, yeah, we're working on it. We know that these are the outcomes that will come from it, but you know, there's no percentage rates, or there's no you know, like specific dollar cost savings and that is by changing over this new system. You know, we don't have any of that. So yeah, I guess I'm feeling that as someone that's trying to hold staff to account on achieving these things, we don't even have a target. You know, I can understand you want to do the work, I support the work, but I don't have a target. And so I'm feeling a little bit exposed. Yeah, on that. Yeah. So that's one big thing that I wanted to give feedback on. I'm happy to say that I'm still nervous about reducing community grants. I think for the amount of money that's involved, you know, it's not going to make us look good. And I do think the community really appreciates that work. So I'm just saying I'm still not comfortable with that. I would like to put a suggestion in place about the way we report debt. I'd really love to see a separation out of the debt that's related to water infrastructure firstly, because I think that we're going to do some work about what we're going to do about waters. And I think it'd be good to say, right, at this point, we're just going to say that's reported separately so people can see what our water debt is. But for all of the different classifications of debt, I would love to see which portion is not paid for by rates. You know, so it's covered by development contributions. So ratepayers that are looking at it and say, oh, you know, we've got $200 million of debt, you know, it's terrible for me. But in actual fact, 150 million of it is actually paid for another way, you know. I would also love to see a separate line for debt that we have that reduces emissions and that might eventually attract a carbon credit. I'm thinking of the Cambridge wastewater treatment plant, and there is a massive reduction in carbon emissions because of that new technology. And wouldn't it be a great news story to say, hey, we've made this investment, you know, it is part of our overall debt, but it was a really important investment to make, you know, and there may come a time where we will get carbon credits for projects that we undertake that make a significant reduction, yeah, for carbon emissions. And I was thinking maybe we should also be reporting what investments we're making for resilience and climate change, but I thought that's probably going too far. Yeah, so might be good to do, but at this point, I think that you're probably going to be a bit annoyed with me asking for all that extra reporting. Yeah. So.
Perhaps I can cover off 2 of the 4 points. Working backwards. So in terms of the separate line for debt to reduce emissions, so we are required in the financial strategy, and you'll see that there's a section there on climate change to talk about some of the investment that we're making in that space. So that information will come. So you're not asking for too much, but where we can try and kind of quantify it, we will, or we'll kind of show that it's part of a project budget or whatever. So we will be doing that. And I guess the points that you raised kind of recognise the fact that this isn't a complete document yet, because the other issue around no targets or hard goals, well, the final strategy will have to have that. So that again is information to come. And I'll leave the other two issues for Ken to respond to around how we report debt and also the kind of looking at other alternative revenue streams.
Yeah, so look, so in terms of that, that breakout of debt, look, it is really unfortunate, but we did put a rider on this document that until we've, firmed up the numbers, we've got placeholders in for debt. So yes, it was absolutely our intention to separate out things like water's debt, and certainly to separate out the growth related debt that's paid for by DCs. So yes, that is coming, but of course we've got a lot of work to do on the numbers first before that can be populated in. Actually, even your we've addressed the debt that reduces emissions, but your last suggestion on the investment in resilience and climate change, look, I actually think that is a good suggestion, and if we can populate that in as well, I think that is worthwhile, because that's some of our broader outcomes, broader priorities. And I mean that is significant. So so we'll take that on board and have a look at that. Targets, Cheryl's well and truly covered again, we haven't set those targets at this stage, but we are required under the Local Government Act, and actually not the Local Government Act, but the Financial Prudence regulations, to set targets and then report against them. So that whole suite of stuff will be in there, which picks up on revenue from sources other than rates, and actually having a quantum that we're aiming for there, etc. Picks up on a whole lot of debt-related matters, etc., etc. So limits on rate rises, and all that sort of thing that will all be in there. Look, in terms of the developing the income streams and things like visitor levies and stuff. So look, sorry, I might have missed something, but I don't recall we're sort of committed in that space. So I mean that might have to be a later discussion, but I didn't, as far as I'm aware, we haven't made any specific commitments in that space. But other than the broader one in terms of trying to reduce the reliance on rates, obviously.
To that point, I think it was probably a conversation that was had following on from rural and provincial, where Bruce Robertson had in more recent times, and I know Claire's raised it in the past, but Bruce Robertson was pretty clear that we don't have, as a nation or a sector, a rating problem. What we have a problem in is other revenue. And that's the ultimate conundrum. And if we can crack that, then we're in this sort of climate, we've been greater insulated, I guess.
Yes.
And we can't just keep going back to the bank of the ratepayer, which,
So just on that visitor levy thing, so I recalled a conversation around this table about the need to be trying some different ways to generate other sources of the revenue. And there was a bit of discussion about how difficult that could be and risky and that. And I suggested, well, Airbnb are happy to do a visitor levy, they said so. And then there was a question of whether that actually meant a bed tax or not. And I said, no, not a bed tax. And I thought that there was general agreement around the table that was worth exploring, but whether or not it's actually going to do it, for this LTP, I don't know. But I'd really, really keen to know what others think, because I'm really impatient on this. I think it's low-hanging fruit. It would be like there's at least $200,000 of operating expenses for cycleways alone, but we could also use it for public toilets and parking and maybe even recreational facilities. And I think that we've got to start. What are we waiting for?
I thought was not to progress it.
Oh, okay.
Around the table, that's just my recollection.
So look, through the chair, look, I recall the discussion as well, because it actually was only just last Tuesday. It was only a week ago. But look, I think there's the wider equity issue. So yes, if Airbnb would be willing to collect something on our behalf, the trouble is that obviously the only thing in their gambit is Airbnb providers operating off their website. What about all the other hotels, motels, even other operators that do like an Airbnb thing, but don't use their website, like, you know, use other websites, yeah, you know, they wouldn't be subject to it. So yeah, so there's a lot of issues with equity and fairness. So yes, I agree here that I actually thought we had kind of discontinued that at least in the time being.
Just make a comment on that.
Mike and then Roger.
Yeah, just to sort of support what Claire's saying, yeah, I don't think we should get specific. I think we have had conversations recently around that whole issue of how can we generate more income, and we've talked about examples of how other councils have done that. And I guess this LTP, it's not for this LTP, but I think it is for this council to look at over the next 3 years and do some work on, and do some talking around the country at conferences and directly to, you know, key staff at various councils when we bump into them, and bring back to some sort of workshop of what are the possibilities of generating extra income, because there's no issue with increasing debt if it's good debt, if it's going to create income. No different to yourself. You buy a car, it's probably bad investment. In terms of you buy a house, it's probably a good investment. So by increasing our debt level, if we're generating future income to help reduce rates, it is something we should be looking at, but not for this LTP. There's no time to do it properly. But I would like staff to take up the intent of the conversations we've had over the last couple of months.
Yeah, I'm quite clear that you and I in particular had on a point one day, some long time ago, asking staff if they could turn their mind to that, appreciating that it was just in a more informal kind of environment. But I think it's something that we need to turn our mind to, because, you know, the future for local government reforms aren't at this stage looking like they're going to go anywhere in a hurry, and we can't just keep going back to, as I say, the bank of the ratepayer. And I mean, we have used alternative forms in the past by way of arbitrage. So, you know, we're not completely mind blocked around alternative ways of generating some form of revenue. Roger.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, one of the things that I raised last week, which I actually don't see within this, I raised the issue of the staff level within council, and the fact that, you know, we're seeing a decrease in growth. Now, I think the expectation from our community is that in setting our budget, we will have reflected that downturn, and we have done some reassessment of staff levels and re-engagement of vacancies and things of that nature. So I think just to address what that expectation of the rate pay will be in us finishing up at that level, perhaps we could have some reference to the work that we've actually done in optimizing our staff level and one of the ways, of course, is that in some cases, we don't need the consultancy costs, which we've actually engaged to make up for where we've been lower in staff operating levels than we should have been. So there's been some initiatives that are there, but at least some reference to say that staff expense has been addressed within setting the rates.
So we've got that under goal 1. We talk about critical evaluation of staff vacancy. So maybe we need to just flesh that out a little bit more.
Yeah. I'd like it to expand it to do a little bit more than that. I mean, I don't think we need to go. I hear that, well, Hamilton are really, they're in a dire strait, and they've gone through a reorganisation. I'm not suggesting that we do that at all. Please don't. But that's just kind of setting that environment, isn't it, within the region on where the authorities are addressing the rates pressure.
And so we can flesh that out a little bit more. But coming back to Claire and Mike and Susan's point around the other revenue streams, perhaps if we've got this section at the front around how we might do things differently in the future, and perhaps if we kind of add something in there to reflect the desire to look at other forms of revenue, and that we'll be doing some work over the next 3 years on that.
Yeah, so I added on my little notes here, another goal for the next 10 years, we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. I added final one would be to investigate and develop where appropriate other revenue streams.
Okay.
Mike?
Contrary voice here. Yeah. I would be super unkeen for this council to try and get into business to generate revenue. Business is hard, capital intensive, highly risky. It's not in the DNA of this place at all to turn a profit. And as a ratepayer, there's no way. No, that's no offence. It's true. This place is not set up to generate profit. As a ratepayer underwriting it, I'd just really unhappy if I knew that my rates were being used to fund capital ventures that essentially are competing with private business. So I'm not directly opposed to you, but it's got to be a real clear delineation. If we're talking fees and charges and stuff, cool. And if you're talking about public toilets and using bike paths and stuff, cool. But if you're talking about like trying to go into business, it's an absolute hard no from me. I just think it's doomed to fail.
Yeah, I don't think that's certainly not where I'm going. I'm not suggesting we set up some sort of business unit and become, property developers or anything of that nature. But I just think there are opportunities there that we probably don't maximise that could create forms of income or revenue that we have missed potentially in the past.
Can I just respond to that?
Kind of commercial lens discussion.
I call this a sausage sizzle fallacy, okay? Being in business, sausage sizzles as sports teams fundraisers have always driven me crazy. Because I've got to drive 30 Ks into town with my sausages that I'm donating, spend a whole afternoon on a barbecue, and then drive 30 Ks home. The whole time I've been out of my business, wasting time and money. And the sausage sizzle people go, woo, we raised $500. I'm like, I personally lost $200 or $300 doing that. Okay, it would have been far better to give you the money. And this council is in the business of being a council. And so, anytime you take away staff time or management headspace to pursue any sort of alternative revenue scheme, be really careful what you're wishing for. I'm actually the opposite. I want this to be a really efficient, lean organisation that rates and provides services. I'm actually not that into this alternative revenue thing because I just don't think it's going to work. It's not what we're set up for. It's the sausage sizzle.
Mike, Peter,
Right.
Claire, and then Andrew.
I've got 2 minutes. So, hey, we'll agree to disagree. So I'm talking subsidiaries of council. There's good models around the country that are doing that. Now, I've got 2 minutes because I'm about to do a Zoom meeting to China, and then I'm heading up to Northland to pay effectively the Northland Council through their subsidiary Far North Holdings about $14,000 to that company, of which I'm sure a hell of a lot's profit to go back to the ratepayers of Northland. So there are subsidiaries that don't take from staff time, but can be set up, particularly if they're nice monopolies. And with that, kind sir, I'll bid you farewell.
It's a hard act to follow, but I think it shows though that we need to get some work on what other councils are doing around the country and what is working and what's not. And I just think we can't not do it because the alternative is just to be stuck in our model that we're in now. It's not taking that longer term view where we do have to explore opportunities and maybe think a bit outside the square. But I appreciate that we don't want to be taking big risks with ratepayer money or anything. But I think by doing some groundwork, understanding what other councils done, what's worked well, I think it's a good starting point.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Andrew.
Yeah, excuse me. I'm in total agreement with Mike's comments. And in very recent history, we've had an infrastructure company owned by councils, fortunately not this one, that went broke and cost its ratepayers significant sums of money. And I totally agree with you, Mike. We're a council, let's be a council, and all that means be as efficient as we can. But when it comes to funding, we've got fees and licenses, and we've got rates. And if we can persuade our government to expand those, it's our revenue base, fantastic. But I don't see them, anything significant come from, like, as you say, sausage sizzle, what the hell? It's just not, it's not a goer.
Some really different opinions in that bunch. It's the beauty of it, right? We can share them all. Okay, well, that's given you a half a steer and a half a not a steer on that one.
So is any work going to be done on possibilities, or just what Mike and Andrew are saying, if that's it, we're not even looking? Because, yeah.
Look, yeah, I mean, you people are the governors, and if you instruct us to look at those things, then we have to look at those things. Although I have taken it from the room today that needs to be quite a quite a considered approach. It's an approach that that we perhaps do over the next 2 or 3 years, rather than between now and obviously the 30th of June for the current LTP. So that's kind of what I've taken on board. I mean, we could potentially commit to that in the financial strategy. I mean, that financial strategy is going to be our document for 3 years. So this idea does not get lost. I mean, we can, if it is the will of the governors here today, and we can certainly build that thinking into the strategy that will look to develop other income streams so that future LTPs can be based on those. And of course, we won't necessarily wait for that. Things can be brought in midstream, and in effect, if it's enabled by a comment of that nature in the financial strategy, then of course we can bring some of that stuff in with the annual plan. But look, certainly picking up some of the messaging here that it's got to be worthwhile. We've got to consider risk, particularly if there's capital investment and involved, etc. We're certainly not running sausage sizzles. Fix that one up loud and clear.
Yeah, just following up on that, Ken. My brief would be keep our ears to the ground, see what's happening in the sector, but us inventing the wheel, it's pretty unlikely and can be costly in a lot of ways, not just dollars, but time and energy.
Yeah. Best example we've got is probably Waikato Regional Airport Limited right at the moment is doing this for us. But that kind of fell in our lap, right? So I'd always be open to something like that, especially something land-based in our district. But that'd be about as far as I'd want to go.
Okay.
Susan, can I just returning to key messages, just one message that came through this a little bit to me is that things are going to be better in 3 years' time, fiscally less challenging. I don't know, I'm a little bit nervous about that as a message, to be honest. Depreciation charges are never going down, they're only going up. Interest rates, and costs are never going to come down. So I just think, if you're almost selling this promise it's going to be sweet in 3 years, not exactly convinced. It might be, it might not be, but it sort of comes through a bit.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Sorry, can I just cover off that last part of the conversation? I know it is a workshop, but so I think what I can gather is we'll put some words in there to say that we're going to be kind of looking at what other councils are doing in this space, and that's something in terms of alternative revenue streams, and we'll just kind of leave it at that.
Yeah, I don't think there's any harm in signalling that we have some curiosity around that space, but I'm just ever mindful of the fact that we tend to see things in a very one-dimensional kind of realm here. We work out what things cost, and then we go, okay, let's chop it up amongst all of our ratepayers, and that's it. And there's no, got to be, I guess the business person in me thinks that there should be a greater commercial lens put over this, and we can't just keep going back time and time again to the bank of the ratepayer without even opening our mind to other possibilities, I guess. And arbitrage is a classic example. We did very well out of that.
$1 million.
So I'm quite comfortable with the way you've expressed it there. Roger and then Claire.
Thank you. And I realise we're talking on high level here, but may I just go back to a particular comment that's in the strategy? And I possibly realise that the majority of ratepayers won't read this strategy. We'll publish it and it gives us guidelines. But on page 4, when it goes into levels of service, makes a statement, continuing with intended levels of service, and that's what we've said, recognizing we may not be fully delivering on some. Now that's kind of contradictory in comment. Can you find a different way of putting that? I know that perhaps what you're intending to say there is in some instances, our defined level of service that we've been doing may not meet up with the public perception of what they believe that level of service should be. You see what I'm getting at?
I know what you're getting at.
And I'm just wondering if you can phrase that somewhere different, just to remove the inference that although we continue with the level of service, sometimes we're not going to make them, which is what it basically says. So I'd just see if you can reword that some other way.
I'll have a go at that. And also Mike's comment around things have been a little bit too rosy about things being better in 3 years' time. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Westpac economists are saying right now that the interest rates will stay at current levels or above till 2025 or 2026. So, you know, what the problem is, I've lived through this era once before with high interest rates. So we get to 23%. Okay, it's a few years ago now, we did go up there. The point being is once you get those interest rates up, they're very hard to bring down. It's not just a matter of bringing down the official cash rate. That doesn't work. What happens is people get built into those interest rates and they survive. And the people that are investing with the banks, or investors, actually move with those interest rates, stay with them. It's very, very difficult to bring down. So I think we're looking at a rather prolonged period. So what I really feel, and I just wanted to make this point earlier, is that we are looking at councils all around us that are in dire straits. Some of the rates are going to be quite significant, their increases. Hamilton being one of them. That is going to put huge pressure on central government. Now, one issue in New Zealand is that of the gross tax take, our local government gets one of the least amounts of any other developed country in the world, actually. We get the least amount of the general tax take. We even pay GST, for God's sake, because the tax on its tax. I wanted to make the point to everyone that this is going to put pressure on this new coalition government. They cannot see towns like, well, let's say a city like Hamilton, and there's going to be a lot of other territorial authorities facing this similar situation. And I believe that they're going to have to either, one, subsidise more services, or two, allow us to have a little bit more of that income. It's going to have to happen. Otherwise, we're going to see councils financially, as was stated in the Waikato Times, I think on Thursday, facing bankruptcy. That was Hamilton, wasn't it? It was virtually, they're technically bankrupt. So that was my point. And I think that I tend to agree with Mike right next door to me. Sorry, I call you Mike, not a councillor. But I technically agree with what you're saying. We don't want to be fiddling around the edges with having sausage barbecues. If we put a tax out, just remember, my brother was in Treasury and he would tell me, collecting tax is the biggest, what it costs to collect tax often negates the actual tax. If you don't have a scale, a size or a scale, the actual cost of collecting it becomes a moot point to negating the actual tax. So he said, you've got to have this economy of scale for those sort of things or it just doesn't work. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So getting back to our key messages that our team have listed there, any other feedback specific to those that you'd like to give the team? I'm just mindful of time, that's all, because we've got another couple of workshops after this.
So on page 11, it talks about the major challenges and risks. And one of them is the uncertainty on local government reforms. And over the page, one of the implications is, the last one is building blocks, such as overhead allocation policies are also affected. So that's I'm not sure what that term building blocks, I think it might mean that stranded overheads may not be able to be recovered or something. I don't know, but I just thought the terminology building blocks is a bit obscure. And then on page 31, at the last part of the disclosure statement, on that, so that's, it says, the result is a more transparent view of what it would normally cost to run the city. Yeah, so I don't think it is a city that we're running. Yeah.
Yeah, could we have an explanation of that building blocks terminology? Is anybody able to
I
clarify?
have to pass that over to Ken.
Sounds highly technical, Ken.
Yeah, so sorry, this is on
Legal world.
page 11. I'm struggling to find.
Yeah.
29 of the agenda. Oh, okay, so I am,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, look, I mean, they certainly weren't my words. I'm not quite sure where these have come from. Building blocks such as overhead allocation policies are also affected. Yeah, look, we need to, and this is under uncertainty on government reform. So yeah, look, I'm not too sure. We'll have to have a look at that
Thanks
in a
for that.
future iteration. Yeah.
Great, thanks for that, Claire. Any other observations for these women?
Cool. So I was just going to go through the financial goals.
There you go.
Are we happy with how those sit? Did you want that fifth goal just kind of a goal, or just mentioned in the general kind of text around how we might do things differently in the future?
Perhaps general text, given that there's no real clear kind of support for it in any formed kind of way. I think just alluding to it potentially in future.
Just on that though, like that work on alternatives, there were some really good comments made by Ken about the risk that's involved. So not just what other councils are doing, or, you know, getting that idea of what opportunities there might be or options. But I thought the risk part was also really good, because obviously that's probably what a lot of people have been talking about, is the risk is unacceptable. So if there were ways that the risk was lower, it might mean the hurdle's a bit easier to.
Cool. So any happy with these financial goals in terms of where they're currently standing?
Just ask a question though, you know, with internal loans, which are an important part, do you charge an interest rate on those? There was one time when you didn't, but you do now. And what is that interest rate? Do you know?
Yes, we do. And it's at the average interest rate.
So the average interest rate. So, which is probably less than the market rate that, you know, like if you had to raise it.
It depends on when we take out the loan.
Yeah.
So older loans obviously at a lower percentage in comparison to higher recent loans. So it's the average.
Okay, all right. Thanks, that's really helpful.
Happy for me to keep moving? And just the challenges that we've identified. And yeah, Claire, this is where we kind of, it's not listed as a challenge, but we do talk about climate change impacts, and the red there will be populated with information once we kind of get that. So happy with these? Any feedback? No? Cool. Cool. So we'll just continue to refine this strategy. We'll bring back a proper draft with all the relevant information that should be in there to a workshop, hopefully before Christmas, and then this gets adopted as part of the supporting documentation for the LTP consultation document early next year.
Awesome. Great. Thanks for that, ladies. Very goodly. I'll straight in then to our next one, which is the fees and charges review number 1. Very creative title for that one as well. Still one of yours, Alunda. Just you're on your own on this one?
I'm sure I have support, but I'll run through the presentation.
Excellent.
So we have circulated the fees and charges schedule as it currently stands. And this is just a presentation of that first draft to the members for consideration and feedback for us to then work back into the schedule. So just to recap on the principles, we use fees and charges to recover our costs for specific services, not to make a profit. Just to know that the revenue that we do build into the budget is demand dependent. So just the rate increase doesn't necessarily mean a 10% increase in revenue. And this is an additional revenue source other than rates. So the fees and charges process runs alongside the LTP and it's reviewed every 3 years. This year we are proposing a change in approach rather than reviewing the schedule every year, running through the fees, to increase it by the local government input cost index, in year 2 and 3, and we've made provision for that in the schedule that was circulated. So a starting point for our fees that we are presenting to you is that we've increased 10% on top of the current fees, 23-24, with some exceptions, things like incentivizing behavior for internment of ashes, or to match actual costs if you look at the charge out rate of our staff members. So the next steps for this would be for the schedule to be presented to council on the 12th of December together with the draft budget. And then just a note that this schedule is adopted formally by council on the 31st of May, not June like the LTP. So we'll take questions.
Thank you, Yolanda. Roger, then Claire, please.
Lovely, thanks, Yolanda. I've been through and looked at all of the different changes, and in most cases you got the 10%. And I acknowledge that when you've got an incentive, you may not do that, or if there's a time-based charging or something like that. Fine. There's just throughout it, there's a number that don't follow that. For instance, pool inspections, and I can't see we've got 108 and now 108, which I can't see that fitting into any of those criteria that you've mentioned. And just amusement device permits. And I know it's minor, but 1150 and 1150, which probably would have been $13 or something like that if you put the, and I can't see why you've made those exemptions, because it's not following your particular criteria that you mentioned there. And there's a number through the whole thing. It seems like it's just been a subjective assessment that we maybe wouldn't put that one up.
Just to respond, I guess we use the word generally because you're quite right in terms of there are some that haven't gone up, and good reason for that. There may be some legislative impediments for our ability to not put up those fees and charges. The one that you identified in relation to pool inspections, we related that back to the cost of an enforcement officer, and we'd already put up the actual rate of the enforcement officer, and we found that it was similar to the existing charge, so we didn't do a double increase. So that was just a general exception, and good of you to spot that one, because a lot of them have actually just gone up 10%. But as I say, there are, because of legislative requirements, our regulations don't allow us to put some of those ones up. So that was one particular exception.
Machine permits?
Sorry, I have to find that one.
Is that legislative? All right, okay. No.
I probably don't have an answer on that one directly, but I'll get that answer for you. Amusement device permits, was it?
Yeah.
Page 7 of 49.
I'll come back to you on.
And it's minor. It's, you know, I mean, we're only talking about 1150, but I just couldn't understand.
But I have to say, you know, while I'm speaking, I guess, is that we have generally put those fees up 10% right across the board for building fees, animal control fees. So, you know, whether you're registering your dog, they've gone up 10%. We're hoping that that's not going to result in additional time in terms of enforcement side of things, that people don't pay their fees as a consequence. But generally 10% is the increase. The other point I guess I'd make is in terms of charge out rates, they're going up by CPI generally for staff.
Thanks, Wayne. Claire.
Yes, so that was about, that's my point actually. On page 38 of our pack, or page 1 of the memo, just above next steps, it says that it will be adjusted annually based on the local government input cost index. So yeah, my reflection is that most of the charges are staff time. And so it shouldn't really, it would be more appropriate to use the CPI or even the wage index. Yeah, because the local government cost inputs, you know, they are often like petroleum, bitumen, you know, things like that. It doesn't really match most of the basis for the charge, which is mostly staff time.
Yeah, so look, I can answer that. So look, the local government cost index that we use basically identifies over a whole range of input factors what the inflation is. So there are very specific ones that actually address you know, basically human resource or so you know, staffing time. So obviously if it is something that is highly reliant on staff time, that would probably be the index we'd use. You know, sort of in the roading space or whatever, you know, the price of bitumen is obviously a key driver, as well as you know, contracting costs, etc. So yeah, so it's horses for courses, but the indexing that we use covers that and uses the most relevant index. Yeah.
I have another one.
Last one, because we have to keep moving on.
Right, sorry. Yes, be quick. Let me have a look and see what page it is. Page 54 of our agenda. When we talk about recycling bins and replacement when there has been customer damage or loss, I would have thought that a full cost would have been the charge if it's through damage to that property. And my assumption is that 70 or even $86 would not be anywhere near cost recovery on one of those bins.
Yeah, look, good question. I'm not sure we've got the expertise in the room today that can answer that. But look, Yolanda, if we could pick that up and just see where that's at. Yeah, but yeah, you know, understand the the intention there that that we're looking for the cost recovery.
Cost recovery. Good.
Yeah,
happy with that. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Bruce.
Yolanda, on page 10 of 49 cemetery fees, there's two cemeteries mentioned, but we've got Patarangi and Pirongia. Is there any fees involved though? Or is there a reason why they're not there?
Kia ora anō. So the reason we've specified out Te Muru Cemetery and Hautapu Cemetery separately is we've increased those by more than 10% just in terms of the capacity constraints that are coming up. So we're just trying to incentivise other people to use some of the peripheral cemeteries, either in Pukeremu or Leamington. So that's why those two have been split out from the rest. All the rest have 10%, apart from, as Yolanda indicated earlier, keeping the ashes the same to try and get a bit more of a buffer between the burial interments and the ashes, because for the same reasons, for capacity, just if we can promote more cremation, then that helps alleviate some of our capacity issues we have.
Thanks for that, Brad. Any other comments, questions for these people? No? Excellent. At the last of your, what slide were we on? So I'm jumping backwards and forwards here. That is the end, is it not? There we go. Yep. Okay, so I'm just jumping all over the place. No further questions? Great. Wonderful. Thank you, Yolanda. That brings us on then